Next week. I'm James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.
And I'm James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com. Build your own floating free city. We've got that story, plus the Russian hack hysteria redux. But first, Trump's swamp lets ISPs sell your browsing history. From Vocative, the U.S. House of Representatives voted on March 28th to allow internet providers to sell customers' sensitive search histories, including medical and financial searches, to marketers. The resolution reverses a rule requiring ISPs to get permission before sharing all that data with marketers. Providers and various telecom trade groups were outraged by the rule, publicly urging its repeal back in January. The Senate, backed by 22 Republican co-sponsors who have received substantial campaign donations by that industry, voted on March 23rd to overturn it. Both bills caused outrage from privacy advocates, which I believe we've noted before is the euphemism for regular people sick of spying and lying. But because this is a joint resolution instead of a bill, it would not only overturn the FCC's earlier rules, it would also prohibit the agency from creating similar rules in the future. The resolution now becomes law if signed by America's next top president. The White House didn't respond to Vocative's request for comment on whether he would sign or veto. I tried to hit up the news links to see if there was any update on this, and I haven't seen anything, James, but not a huge surprise.
Well, thank God we have Trump in office now. Make America great again. He's going to veto the hell out of this bill, right? There's no way he would sign a bill like this, right? Right, guys? That's what you voted for, right? Trump and change? There's no way that he would sign a bill like this. And I heard he's getting rid of the TSA any day now. Any day now it's going to go, right? Yeah, more of the same, isn't it? Yes, just to follow up on that little nugget in there that people may not have heard about. There's an entire article also up from Vocative. A House Republican pushing to set, or House Representative pushing to set back online privacy rakes in industry funds, talking about the author of the bill, or at least the person with her name on it, Marsha Blackburn, Republican Tennessee, who has received hundreds of thousands, nearly $500,000, over $500,000, I stand corrected, in campaign donations from AT&T, Comcast, Verizon, the very companies that, of course, are going to be benefiting from this by selling your data. So, again, absolutely no surprise in any sense, and absolutely disgusting and disturbing. As anyone knows, or everyone should know, your search history reveals everything about you and what you're thinking and where you're going and who you're interacting with and what diseases you may have or whatever. I mean, every single nook and cranny, it knows more about you than you probably know about yourself. And this is now being bundled up or it's going to be bundled up and sold to the highest bidder. Some terrifying stuff, but this is the new normal. So, hey, if you guys haven't checked into VPNs and things to at least provide one layer of security between yourself and your open, naked search history, that might be something to look into. Again, I don't think there's anything such as that will protect you from the NSA or whatever, who are in the trunk lines of the internet, but at least it gives you a layer of security between you and the ISP that doesn't necessarily reveal everything that you're doing online.
A couple notes about this. The article does say that the White House had already indicated their, of course, firm approval of this. And a little bit of good news. As you know, Torrent Freak, just a couple of hours ago, VPN searches soar as Congress votes to repeal broadband privacy rules. So a little bit of a silver lining to that first story on this episode 304 from New World Next Week. As we move to our second story, and it gets even a little more technical, but at the heart of the story, I think, again, we're just sort of exposing the fraud on both sides. CrowdStrike revises and retracts part of the explosive Russian hacking report. This via Liberty Blitzkrieg, where last week Michael Krieger, who runs Liberty Blitzkrieg, published 2 posts on the cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike after becoming aware of inaccuracies on one of its key reports used to bolster the claim that operatives of the Russian government had hacked into the DNC. This is, of course, important since the DNC hired CrowdStrike to look into its hack and at the same time denied the FBI access to its server. So the latest developments from Voice of America, U.S. cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike has revised and retracted statements it used to buttress claims of Russian hacking during last year's American presidential election campaign. CrowdStrike was first to link hacks of Democratic Party computers to Russian actors last year, but some cybersecurity experts have questioned its evidence. Then, on March 23rd, CrowdStrike walked back key parts of its Ukraine report. The company removed language that said Ukraine's artillery lost 80% of the Soviet-era D-30 howitzers, which used aiming software that was purportedly hacked. Instead, the revised report cites figures of 15 to 20% losses in combat operations. Finally, CrowdStrike deleted a statement saying, quote, deployment of this malware-infected application may have contributed to the high-loss nature of this platform, end quote, meaning the howitzers, and excised entirely a link sourcing its IISS data, international something of strategic acronyms, data to a blogger in Russia-occupied Crimea. So in an email to VOA News, CrowdStrike noted that the FBI and the U.S. intelligence community concluded that Russia was behind the hacks of the DNC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC, and, of course, the email account of John Podesta. Yes, the FBI agreed with CrowdStrike's conclusion, but the FBI didn't analyze the DNC servers because the DNC specifically denied the FBI access. Liberty Blitzkrieg wraps up by noting this is noteworthy in its own right, but takes on vastly increased significance given the serious errors in a related hacking report produced by the company. That report, now the company itself, CrowdStrike, kind of quietly backing away from. James?
It's an absolutely incredible thing to watch this narrative unraveling, but unraveling on the, in the back page of the second section of the newspaper, as it were, rather than A1. The headlines make A1. The retraction makes somewhere near the back of the third section of the paper, as always. So yes, just for anyone paying attention at home, or at least trying to pay attention, the fundamental central claims of that the DNC was hacked by Russia were based on this analysis by CrowdStrike, not by the FBI. The FBI did not get access to the DNC servers. They didn't let the FBI analyze the servers. They let CrowdStrike, this independent organization, come in and analyze the servers, and they gave that analysis over to the FBI. CrowdStrike is now having to retract their claims of Russian hacking in Ukraine because, people started challenging them and they realized, okay, we can't put up that charade any longer. But hey, so what does that say about that DNC analysis? And just to make it even more explicit, Michael Krieger had another article from last week that I'll link people to. What is CrowdStrike? In which he has this little passage. The firm's CTO and co-founder, Dmitry Alperovich, is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, a think tank with openly anti-Russian sentiments that is funded by Ukraine billionaire Viktor Pinchuk, who also happened to donate at least $10 million to the Clinton Foundation. Surprise, surprise, guys, it's all an inside operation to come to the conclusion that it was the Russians. This is where the whole Russian hacking meme nonsense is coming from, and it is being exposed as garbage. But again, it's the retraction is never the headline, except on New World Next Week, I guess.
I had to look up. I didn't feel right just saying, that acronym. It's the International Institute for Strategic Studies. So we'll, of course, include that as well as the What is CrowdStrike article from Liberty Blitzkrieg, just like we include everything else that we say and play and note and source down in the show notes for these episodes. Our third and final story gets a little bit of good news. Do you want some liberty? Perhaps you should build your own floating free city. This article from FEE.org notes that journalist and novelist Joe Quirk, co-author of the book Seasteading, How Floating Nations Will Restore the Environment, Enrich the Poor, Cure the Sick, and Liberate Humanity from Politicians, is easily the most interesting person at any cocktail party he attends. It isn't hard to imagine Mr. Quirk, in between introductions and hors d'oeuvres, capturing partygoers' curiosity when he says his occupation is an aquapreneur, which is his own neologism for business-savvy folks looking towards the ocean. Mr. Quirk's almost monotone voice oddly resonates with the confidence of having answered thoroughly all objections. This isn't some passing interest for him. It's an evangelical undertaking happening right now. Seasteading. The concept of building freer societies upon unincorporated parts of the world's oceans is one of those so crazy it just might work ideas within liberty and stateless circles. I have never thought about this idea before, and it is a really interesting one. And this article on FEE.org is what they call a long read. And it goes on to kind of talk about some of the players in this scenario and how they hang out at Burning Man. And then there's Peter Thiel, the PayPal founder that loves going to Bilderberg. So I love the idea, James, but are we maybe in not unmitigated good news territory here?
As usual, I'm not sure there is any unmitigated good news. But I think you hit on the point there. The idea is interesting, and a lot of people have never thought of this idea. So it is good to know about the idea and I've never, okay, so how would that work? It's an interesting little idea to play around with, and I hope that some people actually do attempt it. Now, the nefarious role of Peter Thiel in infiltrating various libertarian movements is one that people should be aware of. And yes, he is a Bilderberger, so hello, giant flashing red light there. But that's the Seasetting Institute. So is some idea that's fundamentally about freedom, does it revolve around an institute and everybody has to go through this institute? Of course not. It's the idea itself that is either interesting and workable or uninteresting and non-workable. I'll leave that up for people out there to decide. Personally, I'll file this in the sounds great, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not going to be the first person to start this seasteading state, but hey, if it works and if people start moving there, hey, oh sure, let's go for it. It's an interesting idea. Anyway, I hope people will just read the article. I think it's a fascinating read, and for people who have never thought about the idea, perhaps opens up some different avenues of exploration of freedom.
Absolutely. I mean, in some ways, it in my mind kind of conjures up the dystopic world of, oh, well, everything's so real. It's some kind of water world scenario where we have to live out on these old oil barges and things. But with, I think, the overlay that we know now about sort of freedom-oriented movements and about 3D printing and about aquaponics and about all this, kind of start to think, wait, maybe it's not that crazy. And then your gears are turning, and then that's exactly, I think, what we wanted to get at with a story like this. It's the idea at the heart of it. Like I've said, I think we've said lots of times, it's not about Napster, it's not about Uber, it's about the ideas, it's about the sort of decentralized power. So as long as we're talking about a little bit of good news, we'll close up with a good news story I talked about this morning on my morning show. American farmers hacking tractors with Ukrainian firmware. It's a really interesting story. It's getting a little bit of coverage. I wanted to kind of spread that out. And also, James, if I could perhaps tie it in with a little bit of self-promotion. I got a new Media Monarchy subscriber told me in a message, I didn't realize your radio show was so cool. Maybe throw in a quick yet more elaborate description of your show when doing New World next week. So I guess I could do that right here. I don't know exactly how I would describe my shows. James, what if I put you on the spot and ask you to say, what is it like? What's the Morning Monarchy like?
What is it like? It's a data dump of information. You go through dozens of stories around different themes. Each day of the week has a different theme. And for myself personally, what I do with researching, I always find new stories that I hadn't heard before that are interesting and relevant to my work. So it's very valuable for me. I'm imagining it'll be valuable to people who like what we do here on New World Next Week.
Thank you for that. It's our live news broadcast every Monday through Friday, and you can find all of that, of course, at Media Monarchy, where you can also find the links to support our work. James and I, you and I both, we've got stuff up on Patreon, which I've found has been a really great way to kind of get the monthly support that we need to keep going and growing, as that is episode 304 of the independent, non-commercial alternative media show known as New World Next Week.
Let's do it again next week.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.